Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with Alex Krainer. How are you?
Very well, Rachel. Thank you for having me, and warm greetings to your viewers and listeners.
Oh, well, tell me, Alex, what is it that you do?
Oh dear, a few things. Most importantly, I'm a father to my two children, so I'm raising those two uh, ungrateful, insolent troops, But apart from that, I'm an author. I'm a former hedge fund manager. I still, make my living in the financial industry, but as an independent consultant, let's call it. And I provide portfolio solutions and decision support services for traders, investors, and investment advisors.
Hmm.
And I also write quite a bit. I published three books. I'm a very extensively canceled and banned author. I published three books. All three have been canceled. One of them was banned very shortly after publishing, and then it got republished, and it was very banned very shortly after republishing. And I also write a lot of articles on Substack, and I do a lot of podcasts lately.
Oh, wow. You are very busy, Alex. And, how did you get started? Was there something from your youth that gave you the impetus for this interest in finance?
Well, I should say maybe I actually had interest in finance since the age of about 16. And mind keep in mind I was born and raised in the communist world. I grew up in the former Yugoslavia, which was a um, socialist country under one-party communist rule. We didn't have stock markets. We didn't have any of this. It's just that when I was 16, uh, I wrote um, I wrote a research report about the stock markets, and I didn't, there wasn't internet, there wasn't anything. I just maybe collected some ideas from the how do you call it, from the newspapers, from newspaper articles. So that's how that happened. Of course, I didn't have even the faintest idea that I would end up doing that professionally. So the path was less than clear. But I ended up going in that direction, and you know what what did define it? I couldn't really tell you, but I do remember one event in my life which kind of defined me, I guess, in part, and that is when I was junior in high school. No, when I was freshman in high school, and I managed to get myself into this because in back then not every high school was the same. So you
Oh,
already chose a trade. You could go to a high school for technicians, for electricians, and I got into this top high school, which was where that prepared you for the university. And so everybody there was, pretty nerdy people. And I started off with all Fs, all Fs. I got like the first quarter I had just Fs in my, because I thought, easy peasy, no need to worry. And it was very rigorous. I didn't study, I didn't do my homework. And then one day, my dad goes to the parents' meeting. And that was the day I wanted to die, because I thought when he comes back home, I'll be in so much trouble. It would be better if I were just dead. I was scared out of my head. And so I was at home. I was extremely nervous. I was just going out on the balcony to see when I'm going to see my dad coming, when the death sentence was going to be.
oh,
Uh, and I saw him, and then I went to my room. I shut myself in my room, and I just waited. I waited. I waited. He came in, and he went and started talking to my mom, and I was listening. And so she asked me, "So, how's everything with the school?" And he's, "Oh yeah, fine. Everything's fine. No problem. His behavior, he's good kid, blah blah blah." And then my mom asks, like, "Well, what about his grades?" And my dad says, like, oh, I don't know, I didn't want to look. And I thought, what? And she says, why didn't you want to look at his grades? And he said, he's 14, that's his business, I don't need to know anything about his grades. And so to me, it was a shock. Well, first of all, I was going to live, and but then, you know, the transformation that happened is that I suddenly realized that those grades are mine. I own them. They
Wow.
weren't just a way to keep out of trouble with my parents. They weren't just a way to keep my parents happy. They were me. They
Mm,
were, and so suddenly I thought like, oh my God, I just have Fs. Am I like a stupid kid there? Am I like the last stupid one in the class? I can't have that. So from that moment on, I actually became a very good student without my parents ever asking me, did you do your homework? How did you do on your test? They never asked me anything about anything anymore. It's just that from that point on, I realized that that was my responsibility and a reflection of me. So I didn't want to be the stupid guy in the class. So I kind of took responsibility for that rather than just doing it just to keep myself out of trouble and my parents off my back. And then by the senior year in high school, because, you know, my great desire when I was 16, 17 was to follow in my brother's footsteps. And he
mm,
went on a foreign exchange program to the United States. And so I felt like I have got to go to the foreign exchange program to the United States. And of course, you couldn't do that unless you were a straight A student. And so in my junior year, I just really did my best, and I didn't have straight A's, but I had the, you know, my GPA was a average. And so there you go. You know, it's I think it should be also partly a lesson for parents, and now I am a parent, that, you know, you have to allow your kids to have their own responsibilities, that they have to be responsible for their own performance, and that they shouldn't fear you. They shouldn't fear
mm,
you, and they shouldn't fear uh, what you're going to think about them, their grades. You should just kind of support them, believe in them, and let them own their own life, because they are their own people. You know, you're a parent. I noticed I noticed from the very early age of my boys that they are their own people.
mm,
And you know, every time you see them work out how to do something for themselves, you can see that they absolutely rejoice. You know, it's like, and then they don't let you do that for them anymore. You know, they're like, no, 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 I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. And when my kids were about 5, 6 years of age, because I live in Monaco, you know, and Monaco is a principality. It's a relatively small place. It's very safe. And so very early on, I let them go about by themselves. And then when they were able to go to school and come back by themselves, you could tell they were so proud of themselves. They were like, and then they wouldn't let me take them to school anymore. You know, they're like, no, 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 no. You stay home. We'll go by themselves. And so that tells you, you know, kids want to be autonomous. They want to be successful. They want to do well. They don't want to be the stupid kid in the class. And I reckon, you know, if you support them in that, uh, they also want to please you, you know.
yeah.
If you support them, if you give them nothing to rebel about, nothing to rebel against, then they won't. And you know, so far so good. My boys are 11 and 13. I have a great relationship with them, and they're good. They're very, you know, they're very conscientious. They do their stuff. I never have to tell them, do your homework, do this, do that. They just kind of come around to it by themselves. And also for parents, they come around to it in their time. You know, you can't, I mean, you can force them through discipline to do things that they're not ready to do. But it's better, I think it's better to give them time, because they do come around to most things. And
Mm,
so there, you know, that's that story. And I think it had an impact on me, because it made me kind of take responsibility for my own life and form my own ambitions and my ideas. and my own direction in life. And when I decided I'm going to go to the United States, my parents were, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, then give it a go. So I went. And then, that I kind of went into studying economics and blah, 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 blah. And eventually, in a way that was very different and indirect, because I ended up also living in Switzerland and I lived in Venezuela. And I was 26 years old when I came to Monaco, and I started working in an oil company. And then in this oil company, they asked me to take charge of the company risk, risk of trading oil, the risk of exposure to oil price, which then led me to, run like an R&D project to work out a system for the group to manage risk. And then, the solutions I worked out kind of pushed me towards the financial services industry. And so that's all I had to say about that.
Yes. So, Alex, this is so interesting. Do you think that responsibility is tied to learning autonomy?
Well, yes, I think it's two sides of the same thing, maybe, and to me, again, I observed in my children very early on that they absolutely love to feel autonomous,
Yes.
you know. And so I guess if you don't hover over them, I guess because you have to also accept certain risks.
Yeah.
They're going to go out, they're going to do something, they might get hurt. And as a parent, you're almost, oh, I have to be on top of them. I have to keep an eye on them at all times. Maybe it's more difficult nowadays, especially in the United States, but I have the fortune to live in Monaco, and it's relatively safe. No, it's very safe. And so I was able to kind of say, okay, you kids go off, you do your thing, and then they do, and they're super happy. And then they still like to keep an eye on you. They still like to have you in their eyesight. So, you
Yes.
watch them play, but they always like look if they can see you, and they see you, and you think they're completely not interested in you, but every so
Yes.
often they take a look. But they like to be autonomous, because when they get to do things for themselves, you see that they're very happy, and you can see that their confidence grows, you know.
Ooh.
And I think that self-confidence maybe is one of the most important, if not the most important, uh, quality, attribute that they need to cultivate and develop to be successful, balanced individuals later in life. And I think that if you always baby them and hover over them, maybe they never get to cultivate that.
Mm. With the confidence, do you think that your father's belief in you, does that really propel you? Does that help the confidence? Someone loves you and believes in you.
Um, yeah, absolutely, for sure. But then, I was also kind of pushed into sports. I was
Oh,
encouraged to do sports, and it wasn't so difficult for me because my brother was, and like I wanted to do what my brother did. If my brother was jumping out of the window, I'd probably go jump out of the window myself. And so he went and he played tennis and he played water polo. And so I played tennis and I played water polo and basketball and did a lot of skiing and windsurfing and all these kinds of things. And I think that all of those things give you, um, yeah, they build you up, because you learn how to win games, how to lose games, how to cope with it all, how to, deal with your teammates. Um, yeah, it's all part of it, like every day you gain a little something,
mhm.
even when things go badly wrong, you gain a little something from that experience, you learn something. And so I think it's good for kids to have lots of experiences and on their own terms in as much as possible.
Mm. So really, the confidence, the key is actually the experiences, actions. Do it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think that has served me all my life, because since about 2003,
Hmm.
I've been basically an entrepreneur. I've been
Mm,
doing my own thing.
yes.
And I think I failed 4 times. And
Sorry for smiling too. I'm fascinated. Can you tell me about that?
well, yeah, you launch into something you think is a good idea, and then you obviously run into obstacles and difficulties and all kinds of problems that you didn't anticipate. Because like when you have an idea about something you want to do, you kind of see it as a straight line. I'm here and I want to get
Mm,
there, and so like
yes.
let's go. But then the actual path winds up going all over the place. And in 4 cases, I failed completely. I mean, I lost everything, and I found myself on square one again. And that's very painful to go through. But um, I guess what you do is you pick yourself up and you start again. And I think that every time you fail, and this is actually, I think this is much easier for American public to understand, because there's a much, much healthier entrepreneurial spirit in the United States than there is, for example, where I live in Europe. In the United States, if you fail, that's okay because you tried. Good on you.
Yes, yes.
Here, if you fail, then people go like, "Oh, poor you. Shouldn't have done it. Maybe your life would have been easier if you didn't do it." I mean, like, Americans, like, if you're doing well, they go like, "So, how many times did you fail in life?" And I was like, "4." And they're like,
You're right,
"Yeah,
because you're
good,
right, because I smiled. I'm like, oh, wow,
Yeah,
good on you for
exactly.
trying. You're right.
Exactly. And in Europe, that culture is not really quite as strong. And people think like you just get a job and you keep your job, and you're gonna get paid at the end of the month, and you just keep that safe. And I never really wanted to live my life like that. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. And well, I'm 54 now. I failed 4 times. I had some success along the way. I'm having some success now. And all I could tell anybody, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and do your best and have faith in yourself, but also in the, what shall we call it, the universe, the world, the future. If you reach out, you know, at some point the world will meet you halfway and you're going to be fine. And so yeah, it's a thing that builds you up little by little. And I feel that the farther you go in this, the more kind of bulletproof you feel. Because even my last failure, so what happened? I was in a hedge fund company, and I ran my own fund, which didn't go well because it was an inflation hedging fund. We thought we would have inflation. The inflation didn't arrive between 2012 and 2020. And then we thought like, okay, we shut it down. And then we had another project, like a much bigger project. And everybody in the company was quite excited about it. And it was going to be an important project for the company. And I kind of owned half of that. And so I was myself kind of feeling very, well, eager to start it, very optimistic about what was coming. And then what happened? The pandemic and the lockdowns, and it all ground to a halt. And then everybody's like, okay, we can't launch it now. Let's delay it another 3 months, and then another 3 months, and then it all kind of poof dissipated. And I found myself with nothing, no job, no income, uh, no, this is the kind of business where if you're going to make a living, you have to kind of manage a substantial amount of assets, of client assets. To do that, because once upon a time, 20 years ago, you could do that like out of a garage with your dog and a computer, and nobody cared. They just looked at, did you perform? Did you
Yes.
make returns? Did you make me returns? They didn't care. But after the financial crisis of 2008, they started with all these new regulations and compliance issues and risk management issues, and you had to have the compliance officer and the risk management officer. So now all of a sudden, even starting a company, you needed to put down, well, at least like $300,000 or $500,000. And if you're down at zero, how do you get there?
Yes.
So it only made sense if you're a part of a bigger system. Like if you're a surgeon, you need a hospital, you need all those
Yes.
facilities and all this stuff that cost a lot of money, and insurance, and how do you call it, authorizations and licenses and all of these things. And if you don't have, if the system just completely spits you out,
Right.
then you reckon my set of skills is completely superfluous to this world.
Mm.
I have literally no way to make a living, and I don't even know how to wait tables.
Yes.
I've never
Yes.
worked. And so I thought, like, well, shit, now what?
Mm. Mm.
And I kind of thought, like, well, okay, so here's what I can do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the five potential ways that I could develop my business again
Yes.
from the ground up. I don't know what might, like at the age of 50, you're no longer, okay, oh, this is going to be great, I'm going to do this. You're thinking like,
Mm.
yeah, maybe it'll be great, but maybe it won't.
Mm.
So I'm just going to slowly pursue all five alternatives. I'm going to work my tail off, because if I'm going to fail, I got to fail giving it my all to not fail. And
Yes.
so that's what I started to do. I started, like, every day, wake up in the morning, say like, okay, to battle, uh, do everything that I knew how to do, everything possible that I could possibly do. And it took about 2 years
Mm.
before results started rolling
Yes.
in.
Yes.
And it was excruciating 2 years, because if you're expending yourself and nothing's coming back, and every door you knock on is shut in your face, and everybody says, go away, we don't need you,
Yes.
it's really, really difficult to do that. So I think that having faith, putting one foot in front of the other every day, and saying, okay, maybe I'll die, but I'll die fighting. And then eventually, the world responds.
Mm.
It's not, it can't be bad forever. And then things start happening, and then, happy days are here again, and everything is okay. And now, I so I'm telling you this whole story about having faith, having confidence, putting in the
Yes.
effort, believing in yourself,
Yes.
believing in
Yes.
the
Yes. Yes.
world. But also, unrelated, I have to say that the very fact of pursuing different options
Yes.
has been a good idea, because they all actually started catching on some traction and results. So now, like, instead of having one source of income, I have four.
Right.
Nice, because again, you feel better, because you think like, oh, even if this one completely collapses, I'm still fine. So that's a good thing.
Yes. And with that 4 times that you failed and the lockdowns, which everyone worldwide got screwed by this letting go of those to pick yourself up and try something else. How do you do that? How did you have that fighting spirit to let go like that?
Well, because you actually have no choice.
Mm.
What are you gonna do? It's either that, or you just shoot yourself, because nobody's gonna give you any gifts, right?
Yes.
Your landlord is still going to ask for the rent money. Your electricity bill has to be paid. Your food bill has to be
Yes.
paid. You have kids, you have to feed them. So
Yes.
what do? You have to. But oh gosh, I blanked out. I had something important to say. It'll come back. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I
This
think that,
optimism that you have, so beautiful. How much you struggle, but you're like, well, keep hoping, keep trying. And, this optimism, tell me about that. I love it a lot.
okay, so optimism is sometimes hard.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, you know, like if you find yourself in a tunnel and there is no light at the end of it anywhere, it's just like not even discernible. It's very hard to have optimism. And well, at that point, you know, I'm kind of good at coaching myself. You know, like I
Yes.
can tell myself, fine, just keep marching forward anyway. And then at some point, you know, you see the light and you're still wondering, well, yeah, maybe there's the way out, but maybe it's a coming train, you know. But what do you do? Well, we still have to keep moving forward.
Mm,
And well, you know, this is actually how things are in life.
yeah.
That's just how it goes. You know, if you're lucky to have a steady job and steady income and you never have to worry about these things, then, you know, so much the better. But if you're an entrepreneur and you take risks, you have to count with the possibility that it's not going to go well always. And sometimes it even happens that it goes well for a while, like it did
Yes.
for me in the hedge fund industry. But then, you know, something completely unpredictable happens, like the lockdowns, and the world shuts down, and your whole business is now razed to the ground. You know, who knew? Who could have prepared
Right.
for that? But, you know, that happens. And then what do? Well, you have no choice. You have to keep going forward. And then
Mm,
you sit down on the drawing board. You see what's the best you can do with your skills, experience, with the whatever assets you have on your side, and then you decide the best course of action, and then you go.
oh, yes. That is the key, Alex. Action always. Just that one foot in
Yes,
front of the other.
in fact, and you know, I've had these conversations recently, but you know, life really is about decisions and actions.
Yes.
So um, you come to a you move along through life, and then life brings you to a juncture, to a fork in the road, and you have to make a decision. And you have to make that decision. You're either going one way or you're going the other way, but you have to make a decision. And then when you make that decision, then it's time for action. You go and you move until the next decision node, and so forth. And I find that taking a decision is almost like a cathartic moment, because
Yeah.
you know, before you make a decision, you're weighing pros and cons, you're
Mm,
not sure, you hesitate, you know,
yeah.
kind of prevaricate, maybe this, but and the moment you take the decision, then you cut it off, then you no longer weigh anything. Now it's time for action, and
Yeah.
now you go. And then I find that what happens is that your whole mindset kind of transforms. Now you're committed.
Yeah.
And now when you're committed and you're moving forward, then your system, you process
Yeah.
the feedback from the world in a different way. You're purposeful now,
Mm,
uh, and I think that you become more effective. So certain things that might not have happened start to happen because you're moving into them, and then the
mm,
world maybe comes your way and meets you halfway, and um, you're able to take advantage of
mm.
certain, you know, maybe fortuitous situations, certain fortuitous encounters, some just lucky breaks that seem to come out of
Yes.
nowhere. And then your life slowly starts to take
Mm,
shape, and your whatever you're doing starts to take roots. It becomes stronger, more stable, and you're in a position to be able to improve your life. and
yes.
and that all starts with the decision and the commitment, and then the action takes you in
Oh,
that direction.
I really love that highlight of the decision and the action. And since you're an entrepreneur, very few people in the world they take this route, high risk. And tell me about the reward. Not just that it's successful, but the mental. Is there high
Yes.
risk and also high reward?
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So I see that you know what you're talking about, because that's exactly the best question you could have asked. Yes. Um, the the process is its own reward.
Mm,
and
Wow.
you can almost watch it build you up. Do you know?
Yes.
uh I don't know exactly how I would describe it, but let's say, okay, so I served in the military during the war in former Yugoslavia, and you know, when you find yourself in this situation, you're very vulnerable and you have no idea what's going on. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about other people, because I didn't really get a whole lot of combat duty. But um, you know, guys tell you that if you survive 2-3 months of war, you become extremely difficult to kill. You know, like they tell
Ooh.
you, if you survive 3 months, you're surviving. There's no killing you, because
Yes.
this is exactly, again, this, you put yourself in the situation and your whole system starts to interact with the world and collecting stimuli and processing feedback, and you suddenly, it becomes part of your system to
Mm.
know how to act, to know
Ooh.
how to keep from danger, to know how you can safely expose yourself to danger. And then, you know, it comes to the point where it takes like extreme bad luck, like
Mm.
lockdowns, to
Right.
to actually to actually so it becomes, you become very capable at navigating through very risky and difficult situations.
Mm.
And I think that this also works in sports and in entrepreneurship. You know,
Ooh.
you can take risks, but you learn how to manage, and you learn how, even if you take a blow, you can keep your balance. So,
Wow.
and you know, the best part is that if you deal straight, like if you keep your integrity and your honesty, it also gives you a kind of a sense of not only self-confidence, but you kind of think like you self-approval,
Oh,
self-esteem.
wow.
And self-esteem is a wonderful thing. You know, if you lie in bed with the person you like, it's a wonderful thing, you know. And if you're comfortable in your own skin, that's a wonderful thing. When I say you go to bed, I don't mean with somebody. I mean, when, you know, like the question of how do you sleep at night? Well, I sleep
Right.
wonderfully at night, you know. I sleep wonderfully at night. I
I
sleep like a
got you. I
baby.
got you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Well, I
yeah,
love that.
I think uh it's work, it's effort, is, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, but it's its own reward. It's actually building you up. It's making the world a better place for you, you know.
Yes. The risk, it is worth it. The reward is there. And Alex, my very last question for you. What makes you feel alive?
Love.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Alex Krainer.
Thank you, Rachel. It was a great pleasure to join you again. Greetings to your listeners and viewers.